New York's classic rock, Q104.3.
First of all, life has been hard, period, in the pandemic. But this time of year particularly is hard, and that's why I have asked Dr. Carrie Ditzel, who holds a doctoral degree in clinical psychology, to join us this morning because a lot of people are just down, and part of it is because you may suffer from SAD. I'm not talking about sadness, I'm talking about seasonal affective disorder, which to me didn't even have a name until around 10 or 20 years ago. Good morning, doctor. How are you feeling?
Good morning. I'm feeling overall well. I'm hanging in there, which really is the only answer these days, right, for all of us. But I'm doing okay, thanks.
Okay, so what can we do? And I think more people than not, they suffer from seasonal affective disorder, which I think might have to do with the lack of sunlight, at least from my perspective. I notice that I'm in a better mood when the sun is shining. And lately it's just been so cold and snowy, and of course, it gets dark early.
Yeah, I think the important thing to think about here is the difference between seasonal affective disorder, which is a real clinical disorder that has real treatments available to it, from what you're talking about, which might be winter blues, which is the lesser version, which I think many of us are experiencing.
Okay, how do you know the difference?
Yeah, so it's really important to distinguish the difference because, listen, day to day we live on a spectrum. There are days where we're happier, where we're a little more blue. The key is how you're functioning. If you are able to get yourself together, use some regular old coping skills to get going, and you can go about your life pretty much the way you usually do, you probably got a little bit of winter blues. Listen, we all do here and there. You all get the blues once in a while. Seasonal affective disorder is really a subtype of depression where things like low motivation, low mood, feeling down, maybe changes in sleep and appetite, feeling like kind of cognitive differences. Maybe you're not able to concentrate or focus on your work or the things you need to do. When these things become so impactful in your day-to-day, you're having trouble doing your day-to-day things, and it's lasting a few weeks or longer, then you might actually have what we call seasonal affective disorder. And it's important to call it what it is because that opens the door to help and treatment. There's a lot of things that you can do with the help of a counselor or a mental health professional that can help get you through it and do and function better and not have the negative impacts of not functioning well then start to take their toll, because if you let it go and you don't really address it and you're having trouble with work or not taking care of things or even more irritable with others, your relationships may suffer, then all of a sudden you have this snowball effect, right? So I think the first step is really taking a look at yourself, being honest with yourself and saying, am I just down and, this time of year, or I have a lot of stress, or the pandemic is getting to me, but I'm okay, I'm going along, from do I have real symptoms that are really impacting my life? And I think that's step one for most people.
So it's therapy, that would be the answer for SAD, or is it also drugs?
Well, it's really an individualized thing. I can't say for for everybody this is going to be the treatment, but I will say that seeking some consultation with a mental health professional or even your medical doctor, whoever you have access to, is the first step. And then you'll go on a path, if you're open to it, to see what will help. I will say, as a clinical psychologist myself at our practice at Baker Street, we are seeing a lot of people that otherwise would have coped this year come in and want to talk. And they really are utilizing that psychotherapy piece, which is really just counseling. It's having a third impartial party help you bolster your coping skills and come up with a couple strategies. That's one way, and that is one really well-known and legitimate way to deal with any kind of depression or mental health issue. The other piece is medication. That's not my area because I don't prescribe, but if you're talking to a mental health professional and they see signs that the therapy might not be enough, or you might also benefit from the medication, then you would go get that consultation. And so oftentimes you might use both, but really as well, just having counseling, having somebody to talk to, addressing it and not just letting it go is going to make a big difference right off the bat.
Okay, now let's talk about the nuts and bolts of finding the right therapist for you. I always hear about this, but in reality, how do you determine that you have found the right therapist? Because that's really key. If you're talking to someone who cannot help you, or you cannot be open, or you're just not in sync, so how do you interview a prospective therapist, or even by email?
I think that's a great question. I think that for the most part, you have to start with saying, what do I need and want from a therapist, and what's my style? Every therapist is a real person, and they bring a little bit of themselves with them, but they also have expertise, and they might have an orientation to how they do things. And so you want to ask those questions. There's different things out there that are a little more structured in terms of treatment approaches. There are other therapists that might look at things in a more bigger global sense. And so you could ask about their orientation, and you could even ask for a brief consultation, like a brief phone call, to get a feel for them. Because the client-therapist relationship is one of the most well-known factors that helps with improvement. So you're absolutely right. If you're not connecting on some level, it's going to be hard to be open and trusting with that person. So you have to have a good feel. But I would also suggest give it a chance, because especially if you haven't done therapy before, you may have kind of some preconceived notions. It might feel a little uncomfortable at first. That's not unusual. I always suggest giving it a couple sessions to get a feel and get a little rapport with the person that you're talking to and the therapist before you make a final decision, and discuss it with them. I love when my clients share with me what they're getting or not getting. I like to say to most of my clients when I first meet them, I'm a chatty therapist, right? I'm not going to sit and go, I'm going to chat with you. Some people love that. Some people may not. They might say, be quiet, I just need to talk. Tell me that. I want you to tell me. If I'm going on and on, tell me. So these are the things that you have to, just like any relationship, kind of work out. So I would say, ask some general questions about their orientation, the way they approach therapy. Ask if they'll do a little quick screening phone call with you, and then give it a shot, give it a few sessions, and then make your decision if it's a fit for you.
I'm speaking with Dr. Carrie Ditzel, who holds a doctoral degree in clinical psychology. Let's go back to just having the winter blues. What are some of the coping mechanisms we can use if we're having the winter blues? Because I'm talking to you right now on a snowy morning, and the temperatures are going to plummet down to 15 tonight. So what do you do if you have the winter blues and you've had enough of this and we have 2 more months of this?
Well, first off, talking about it helps. Talking helps. So I like to say reaching out, connecting with people now. Of course, making connections can be challenging right now, but do what you can to connect with others. But there are some concrete things you can do to deal with that lower grade winter blues thing. So first, stop and think about how you're spending your time, if you're having any fun, right? It's easy to not have fun this time of year. We're hunkered down, we're going to work, we're coming back to our house, we're holed up here because it's cold and dark early and snowy. You might not be taking time outside the way you usually do. So stop and think, like, what can I do to just have a little fun and enjoy myself a little bit? And make sure you're carving out and purposefully, intentionally taking time to do it. That's hard. We get in our routines and we get in our day-to-day, and all of a sudden we look around and, when was the last time I laughed? When was the last time I felt relaxed and enjoyed myself? So that could be number one, making sure you take that time for yourself and identify something to do. The other things I like to say is think about your body and your movement and your overall wellness, because this time of year, especially with the darker hours here in the Northeast, right, we're dark at 4 o'clock, you may not be moving around as much as you usually did. So making sure, now I'm not saying you start some crazy new workout routine, but you're moving. This is a time where we sort of hibernate. Our body sort of hibernates because of all these factors. So one way to get your mood boosted is to move, whatever that looks like for you, that's right for you. Even though it's cold and dark, maybe bundling up and figuring out a creative way to get outside and move and take a walk that you maybe otherwise wouldn't want to do, but if you get yourself to do it, you might come back and feel better and refreshed. And making sure you're eating as healthy as you can. This is a time where we can definitely comfort eat and feel warm and cozy with all those carbo-loaded foods and things like that. And although that might be pleasurable in the moment and feel good, you might feel sluggish and yucky after. So not to say we don't all do that once in a while, but make sure you're trying to eat, in a balanced way, and watch your sleep. Make sure your sleep environment is conducive to sleeping. With it getting dark early, it's easy for your house to feel dark. And I look outside at 4 o'clock and I'm ready to go to bed. I'm like, is it midnight? I'm so tired. So lighten and brighten your house during the daytime hours. Try to keep your sleep routine in check. That kind of gives you your signals, like it's time to go to sleep. So in the evenings, try to do the same things around the same time to give yourself those signals it's time to go to sleep, and keep your environment dark and cozy at night, maybe light and bright during the day.
Let me ask you about a remedy that I had heard about, and every year I remind myself to do this, and I never do. And this is for those who are missing the sunlight. I have been told if you keep a bowl of real charcoal where you are working, because that basically comes from the sun, that your exposure to that charcoal can help. And I've never tried it. Every year I think of this, and I never do it.
Well, I think the point here is trying to accommodate for the lack of that sunlight and being outside. So I think the answer is going to be different for each person, whether it's charcoal, or some people like light therapy, or some people just like to force themselves outside during the daytime hours where they're going to get some light, vitamin D and all of that. I think the key is just saying to yourself, am I affected by the lack of the exposure to the sunlight? Does it bring me down? Do I really enjoy that? And do I need that? And if I do, and I notice that I'm not feeling well this time of year, what can I do? And now listen, experiment a little bit. Of course, if you're adding anything like the light therapy, or some people like to do vitamin supplements this time of year, I always recommend checking in with your doctor first. Make sure you do that. However, these are the things, that's why these things come about. It's how can we get and make up for that loss of outside light exposure, warmth and all of that stuff. So, listen, I never say there's a bad idea. I tell my clients all the time, try your ideas, see if they work. Let's give them a shot for a few weeks and see if it helps you. And if charcoal does it, great. Simple, inexpensive.
Exactly. We have 2 minutes left, and
Sure.
I'm going to give you a handful here.
Okay.
Remember, where I heard this week, but this really resonated with me because of the polarization that we're all feeling now, and the anger. I heard someone say, what we really need right now, all of us, regardless of how you feel politically, what we all need right now is empathy.
I think we are all going through, in our own way individually, we're experiencing it as individuals, but we're all going through a shared experience, whether it's the political climate or the pandemic and the impact. As a collective whole, as a world, we are going through something. And our clients at Baker Street are talking about it. I'm talking about it with clients all the time. People that otherwise would have coped and gone through life just fine and dealt with winter blues and not even maybe even noticed, this year in particular are feeling more down, more upset, more anxious because of all of these other stressors and things that we're dealing with. We're dealing with so much. So I think the empathy is a wonderful word to just mean that, maybe I don't understand you and your perspective, but I'm here to listen. That's what a therapist and therapy at its core is. It's about having somebody who is there to empathize and try to understand your experience. And then, of course, that next step in treatment is helping you take steps to get better if you're not doing well. But empathy is the core of that. So I think empathy being the core of how we relate to one another is a wonderful message.
I thank you so much, Dr. Carrie Ditzel. And coming up next, I will introduce you to John Fee. He was an FDNY lieutenant who has retired as a result of his 9/11 illness. He has just put his life in the absolute right direction, helping others. And there's a big event coming up next Saturday that he'll be telling you about. Next, Q104.3.
New York's classic rock. Q104.3.